What a pleasure to see our students who are preparing for the last weeks of classes and finals. Yay! And our faculty, thank you faculty. How many students are graduating? Let's see, where are the seniors? Who's graduating? Congratulations! Isn't that exciting? Oh, that's so wonderful. So I want to start today with a little reflection. First, I want to welcome in a very particular way Kelly Dunn, class of '64, who has created the Sower Seed program. Thank you, Kelly. And her son, Jay Dunn. Jay, welcome. It's so great to have you here. And we have some esteemed alums with us today. I won't call out everybody's name, but welcome to my alumnae sisters. I want to thank Sister Ann Howard for all you've done to organize today. And I want to thank also Dr. Gerlach and Dean Michi for your fine work as well, and also Kelly Brown. Kelly Dunn created the Sower Seed program to inspire Trinity students to live lives of service through hearing about the wonderful service work being done by our young alums. And we will hear shortly from a magnificent young alum, Morgan Carrillo, who's been doing fabulous work out there. I thought it would be appropriate to start today, however. I don't know how many of you are actually familiar with the parable of the sower seed. So I thought we might start just with a reflection by reading the parable and thinking about what it means. I took this version of the parable from the Gospel according to St. Luke, chapter 8, if you want to look it up and read along. A sower went out to sow his seed. Now, as he sowed, some fell on the edge of the path and was trampled on, and the birds of the air ate it up. Some seed fell on rock, and when it came up, it withered away, having no moisture. Some seed fell in the middle of thorns, and the thorns grew with it and choked it. And some seed fell onto the good soil and grew and produced its crop 100-fold. Saying this, he cried, "Anyone who has ears for listening should listen." Now his disciples asked him what the parable might mean, and you're probably wondering about that as well. So he said, "To you is granted to understand the secrets of the kingdom of God. For the rest it remains in parables, so that they may look but not perceive, listen but not understand. This then is what the parable means. The seed is the word of God. Those on the edge of the path are people who have heard it, and then the devil comes and carries away the word from their hearts in case they should believe and be saved. Those on the rock are people who, when they first hear it, welcome the word with joy, but these have no root. They believe for a while, and in time of trial, they give up. As for the part that fell into the thorns, this is people who have heard, but as they go on their way, they are choked by the worries and riches and pleasures of life and never produce any crops. As for those seeds that fall on the rich soil, these are the people with a noble and generous heart who have heard the word and take it to themselves and yield a harvest through their perseverance. Isn't this wonderful? Through the Sower Seed program, we celebrate those Trinity women who take it to their hearts and yield an abundance of joy and goodness through their perseverance. In a minute, we will hear from this year's Sower Seed speaker, but to introduce her, we have another one of those wonderful Trinity women about to graduate now, who has so much goodness in abundance. Brenda Alonso, class of 2018, is going to introduce our speaker. Please welcome her. Brenda. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
On behalf of all of the students at Trinity, I am very honored to welcome you to today's Sower Seed lecture. I'm a Dreamer Scholar, I'm an athlete, and above all, I'm a Trinity senior. And I love my Trinity experience. One of the things I love about being a student at Trinity and studying at a women's college is that I am inspired by all of the women who have come here before me, who walked these hallways, who sat in this very room when they were students. Trinity women and men have achieved so much and have made such a positive difference in their communities. Today, we welcome a wonderful role model, Morgan Carrillo, a foster care and adoption social worker at the National Center for Children and Families. Morgan is providing valuable services to youth and families who have entered foster care in DC due to neglect and abuse. Morgan graduated from Trinity's College of Arts and Sciences in 2013 with a major in international affairs and a minor in women's studies. She earned a Master's of Social Work from Catholic University of America with a concentration in social change. Today, she is going to share her own story with you and tell you about her amazing work as an advocate for youth. So, to introduce Morgan, I want to tell you why I am inspired by her. I had the honor of being a senior Seton Canine Fellow in 2016, and I worked at the National Council of La Raza to promote immigrant rights. I also interned at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops with the Department of Justice, Peace, and Human Development. Through these and other experiences, I know the importance of advocating for those who are in need and making a commitment to the value of Catholic social teaching, including social justice, economic justice, and respect for human rights. And those are the values that Morgan pursues each and every day, and she works with youth and families. She has several years of national and international experience, blending political analysis, crisis intervention, and direct service. Morgan is a passionate victim advocate who has specialized knowledge and experience in the areas of gender-based violence, LGBT youth empowerment, and human trafficking. That's what Trinity women do. We see a problem, we take action, and we are compassionate about serving the needs of others. And in doing so, we make a positive difference in the lives of so many people. And we make a stronger community. So, it is my honor today to welcome a true Trinity woman, Morgan Carrillo.
Wow. Let me just say right off the bat what an honor it is to be standing before you right now. Thank you, President McGuire, for this invitation. Thank you to the Dunn family for hosting this lecture series. And a big thank you to all of you for allowing me to reflect on why I do the work that I do. As a relatively new alum in the beginning of my career, the invitation to speak to you today was a flattering one. When President McGuire asked me to speak, I spent a lot of time wondering why on earth she would do that. Reading through the list of prior Sower Seed speakers, and having seen a few present in my years here, I'm humbled, unsure how I measure up to women like Corinne Cannon, Nicole Lang, and Philonda Johnson. But to be a Trinity woman means that you're always in the company of some very incredible women. And one thing I learned at Trinity is to never turn down an opportunity, especially an invitation from President McGuire. Yeah. So today I'm going to talk to you about service, about how service is half action and half listening, about how every action sows the seeds of change, which eventually grows into a huge impact. And speaking of impact, I'm going to discuss Trinity's impact on me and my career, the amazing women here at Trinity, and most importantly, how Trinity taught me to affect change in my own community. As you probably know, I'm a social worker. And when I tell people I'm a social worker, they usually ask me one of two things. First, what is social work? And more often, why did you choose that? Let me start by answering the first question. To put it one way, social work is basically the action that you take to pursue social justice. As a social worker, I have the privilege of enabling people to be the best version of themselves, whether that's by helping them secure stable housing, by advocating for laws that actually help victims and survivors of domestic violence or sexual assault, or even just by talking to a kid about how to come out to his mom. As for why I decided to be a social worker, well, obviously it's not the pay. There are actually a couple of reasons for this one. As a person of faith, I feel that I can live out my discipleship by spreading gospel through my real-life actions of service. In becoming a social worker, I knew that the work I did may never amount to a high salary, but I make a decent living. More importantly, although the work I do will never amount to power and prestige, it allows me to empower others. And true impactful change for me comes from someone else being able to take control over their own life, to steer their own ship, to decide their future. I love being in a field that allows me to serve others through empowerment, sowing those seeds of change. Growing up, I was surrounded by people who saw the importance of helping others. Take my dad as an example. For as long as I can remember, my dad always purchased a Thanksgiving turkey for an immigrant family in our community. Even when money was tight for him and it was hard to get our own turkey, he made sure that we got their turkey and always took me along to the community center to drop it off, regardless of if I wanted to go that year or not. He doesn't do it for money, a photo op, or even praise. He does it because he knows it's the right thing to do, that everyone deserves to have a nice family dinner on a holiday. It's that simple for him. I toured every DC school on my college tours, but growing up around people who regularly performed these small but meaningful acts of service led me to attend Trinity, a school with a rich history of public service, starting with its founders. The first thing that I remember about Trinity is how amazing I thought the history was. When the S&Ds founded Trinity, they did so because there were no Catholic colleges for women. Despite the backlash they undoubtedly received, those persistent nuns worked to secure a woman's right to education, starting with the women in their very own community. They didn't care about what others had to say, they knew what the right thing to do was, and they went ahead and did it. It's no surprise that women like leader Nancy Pelosi and Kathleen Sebelius are alumna of this school. They are women just like those sisters. They identify a need and then a solution, and they get it done. Trinity has stayed true to its mission of educating women who otherwise wouldn't have access to education, and despite calls to turn co-ed, have remained single-sex to give women an open field to explore their potential for leadership. Trinity has shaped the lives and careers of so many women, and I'm beyond proud to be one of them. When I moved to DC from Florida to attend Trinity, I intended to study international affairs for a career in intelligence. The more I studied, though, the more I began to recognize that so many of the world's issues seemed to coincide with oppression, abuse, and exploitation of women and girls. I began asking questions. Why is this happening? Why is this acceptable? And what can be done about it? In an effort to answer that last question, I became the vice president of the Women's Student Action Coalition my sophomore year. Our focus was to engage the campus community on women's issues and to inspire women to take action. In the fall of my junior year, I took Women in Community Change with Dr. Pylons, which changed my life, literally. I already identified as a feminist and had already studied some feminist theory, but during that class, I learned how to put theory into practice and realized that the most successful solutions are often inadvertently rooted in a critical analysis of our broken world. Dr. Pylon challenged me and my peers to become activists, to think critically about what can be done about particular issues, and to ask the right questions. I was constantly challenging myself, but Dr. Pylon challenged me even more. When I questioned why the world was okay standing back and observing the widespread abuse of women, Dr. Pylon looked directly at me and simply said, "Great question, what are you gonna do about it?" She challenged me to see myself as an agent of change, which made me see my future as one of service and leadership. Around this time, as Dr. Farnsworth or Dr. Stoker might remember, I started tailoring all of my coursework so it focused on social justice and international women's issues. I became the president of the Women's Student Action Coalition my junior and senior year, which allowed me to find my voice and use it to stand up for others on an even greater scale. I began to think of standing up for marginalized groups whose voices were often muted as an obligation, and activism and service as my own duty. As I merged international affairs, women's studies, and my campus leadership, I was continuously and intentionally enlightened to the injustices served upon minorities, the poor, differently abled, and of course, women and girls. Trinity professors provided me a safe space to challenge myself, sometimes to the point of tears. I'm sure a lot of people remember me just crying in their office. They challenged me to ask tough questions, to fall and get back up again, and most importantly, to view myself as an agent of change. Trinity professors gave me those seeds I needed to begin my journey into public service. For a lot of my time at Trinity, I was kind of sick. So I pushed myself hard academically as well, and as graduation rolled around, I decided that I needed a break from school to really determine what was going on with my health and decide exactly what I wanted to study in grad school. I knew I wanted to serve, but I didn't know what degree would get me to where I wanted to be. Being the planner that I have always been, I wasn't willing to waste time and money on a degree that wasn't perfect for me, so I took some time. I worked commission sales at Nordstrom for a year and learned how to hustle for a living. About 6 months post-grad, I determined that social work at Catholic was the right program for me. They had a strong macro program where I could continue to tailor my interest in international women's issues and policy into my curriculum, and they had an international program as well. I went the full-time route, taking 5 classes a semester, plus a graduate internship both years. I also worked as a graduate assistant for community service in the campus ministry office. Here, I was able to supervise student leaders as they led groups of students in service and guide them in their reflection based on Catholic social teaching. Similar to Trinity, Catholic allowed me to design my own concentration, focusing on international development and gender. As a grad student, I asked more questions and even negotiated a consortium class and an independent study here at Trinity so I could come back. During grad school, I worked in the Philippines with a reproductive health program. As a social worker, I have a unique skill set that's in demand regardless of country. However, in this role, I needed to push myself to reconcile my own cultural upbringing and beliefs with those of the people that I was serving. Here I was, a young, eager American woman walking into slums in an extremely conservative Catholic country, asking people highly personal questions about their reproductive health practices. It pushed me outside of my comfort zone, becoming culturally competent and not the white savior that they expected and I so wanted to avoid. I learned that people skills and cross-cultural empathy were intrinsic to working with the youth there. From day one of landing in Manila, I learned that my humility, my determination, and resourcefulness that I learned here at Trinity would be the qualities that would serve me best there. I saw that too often Americans were ineffective because they began their role assuming that they knew better than those they were serving, rather than acknowledging that they had a lot to learn about how things were. From this, I learned to allow people to be the experts of their own experiences, which is something I use every single day in my work. Before I transitioned into the role I'm currently in at the National Center for Children and Families, I worked as a clinical case manager in SMILE's transitional housing program for LGBTQ youth. Many days, this job was difficult, and the youth wore my patients very thin. Many days, it felt as if me being there or not made no difference at all. However, one of my youth, one who had been pushing me for months, explained to someone else that if it wasn't for SMILE and the acceptance he received from me, he wouldn't have been alive. In advocating for homeless LGBT youth, I learned that the need was as large as housing and as small as telling a child who had been kicked out by his mother for being gay that he was in fact worthy of love. Those seeds of feeling accepted, of feeling worthy, of being important, sow a lifetime of self-esteem. I could not talk about why I do the work I do without also speaking about the SNDs who I had the privilege of getting to know while at Trinity, particularly Sister Mary Ellen Dow, who sadly passed away last year. The summer before my senior year, I stayed in town a few extra weeks before returning to Florida. I attended a march and vigil with Sister Mary Ellen, Sister Mary Hayes, and Dr. Pylon to protest against the Vatican's handling of the Leadership Conference of Women Religious. We dressed in red, and Dr. Pylon loaded us all into her car, and there we went, talking about history, activism, and civil disobedience the entire time. I was so inspired that day to stand with these amazing sisters who lived their service to others in every bit of their being, and I decided that I wanted to be as fierce as them. Though I had been baptized Catholic and completed my first confession and communion, I had never completed my confirmation. In my senior year, I decided to complete the year-long course to receive the sacrament of confirmation. During this time, I found myself asking so many questions in and out of the group. I grappled with how to justify my feminist identity and my Catholic one, and asked many questions of Sister Mary Ellen Dow. I felt alienated and angry by what I felt the church's opinion of me as a young woman was, and I often felt like who I was supposed to be was with odds with church teaching. I wanted to embrace Catholic teaching and also fight for the betterment of women around the world, and I felt like I had no seat at the metaphorical table in the church. Sister Mary Ellen challenged me. She taught me that questions were not only healthy, but that she had them herself. She challenged me to engage more with the sisters in residence, to ask them my burning questions too. I spoke with so many of them and listened as they told me their stories. I reconciled these questions by choosing my most feminist saint as my confirmation name, Kateri, and having Dr. Pylon, the person whom I respected as a Catholic feminist the most, to sponsor me. Through these little conversations about faith, service, and social change, I began to understand how my gifts and talents could be used to serve others in ways other than I had previously imagined. One day, after volunteering at Sacred Heart Dinner Program organized by Campus Ministry, Sister Mary Ellen and I spoke on the way back to campus. She told me that she had been watching me interact with the homeless men who had come through for food that evening. She told me that she felt I had done well helping other students become more comfortable conversing with them, and she thought that I had a gift. She explains that I spoke to the homeless men like they were anybody else. And I looked back at her and I was like, because they are. She explained the importance of seeing the humanity in all people and providing a person dignity by social inclusion and normalcy. And in her ever-gentle tone, suggested that with this ability, I should think more seriously about a career in public service, where I could make my life's work bettering the lives of others. And I give you all of these little stories, from Dr. Pylon's challenge to be a change agent, to Dr. Farnsworth, to Dr. Stoker's willingness to allow me to explore my calling to serve, to Sister Mary Ellen's gentle push toward the field, and everyone else in my life allowing me to be angry, to ask questions, to argue. I want to impart this. All of these small actions, these small gestures, led me to where I am. All of this impacted me. They shoved me to serve. The little things by themselves almost seem inconsequential. The little things I do, from telling a child that they matter, to listening to someone when they cry, to telling a trafficking victim that I think she's strong, it matters. So I ask you today, who in your life has made an impact on you? Is it your mom who works 2 jobs so you can go to school? Your teacher who helped you talk about your sexual assault? Your husband who knew you were exhausted last night so he put the kids to bed for you? And then I challenge you to think about how you can serve. You don't have to become a social worker. You don't have to start your own nonprofit. But think about the things that you see that you don't like in the world. Think about the things you believe are unjust. Think about the people whose voices are silenced. Then think about your own gifts, your talents, and about the small actions that you can take to better the lives of others. And just like all Trinity women do, get it done. Thank you. Yes, I will. I will take questions.
Aren't we so proud of Morgan? And I see the Sisters of Notre Dame are beaming. Now, it wouldn't be a Trinity event without the students questioning and asking questions. So we're going to open the floor for your questions and comments. Let's hear from you. We're using this microphone, so come on up to the microphones. Sister Ann will bring you the microphone.
Hi.
Oh, hi. So I heard you talk about your dad taking you to give turkeys to the homeless people. So aside from that, what was like the first thing you did to give back to your community, like by yourself?
So by myself, I think I started engaging in a lot of community service here at Trinity, actually. I worked in my church a little bit when I was at home in Florida, but I really started doing community service here at Trinity. I think that the role that Trinity played in the community was important, and I always started, I started here, basically, and doing that, and really feeling empowered to help others and kind of take it upon myself to go and find opportunities to serve when there weren't any. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Tiffany, and I'm a sophomore.
Hi, Tiffany.
So my major is early child care, and I really love working with kids specifically because I believe that everything starts when you're a toddler, baby and things like that. So when you were talking, you kind of sound like me, but you're there already. You're where I want to be. So I'm saying this to say I take Dr. Pyron's class. She's making me want to shift my thinking.
She does
from,
that.
Exactly. From not just like, kids, but like society as a whole. So for me right now, I'm saying I'm kind of stuck because I'm a little bit shy around a lot of things, even though I can be very verbal. Even I can be very verbal. I'm still a little shy when it comes to coming out and like talking to people. So what kind of advice would you say you can give to me as like a beginner? Because I'm trying to be like where you're at right now.
I was so shy in school. I think every professor I had can remember me like resisting speaking. Even this, like you can tell how I'm nervous when I speak, and that's normal. That's very normal. I become more comfortable, and I learn to not turn down opportunities because of that fear. I don't like public speaking, but I enjoy doing it because it allows me to talk to you and to talk to other people. But I had to be forced to speak a lot. But I think just learning that if you do push yourself out of that comfort zone, the things that you'll learn and the things that people will learn about you really makes a difference. So, yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a twofold question. As president of WISAC, what was your biggest challenge and what was your greatest accomplishment?
Sure. I think one of my biggest challenges was just trying to find a way to relate to everyone, to kind of give the issues that I thought were important and kind of share them with everyone, because what I find to be important isn't what you necessarily prioritize the most. So I think trying to find enough issues that everyone can identify with and want to talk about and want to be active on and talk about was something that was a big challenge for me. I think one of my biggest successes was bringing Half the Sky to Trinity for a documentary series that we did. It had just come out around that time, and I, one summer before my senior year, I think I went ahead and wrote the writers, and they gave us screening rights to the film to show here. And then we had a discussion with faculty after, and it was great. And I think that was something that was really powerful for me, because I got to merge my international issues, my interest in that, with my interest in gender, and share it with everyone. So it was good. And we got we got featured on like the writer's website and stuff, so that was fun too. Sure, so Half the Sky, I believe they've come out with another book as well. It started as a book. It's by Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Woodzun. They're journalists, and I believe they both worked for the New York Times, actually. He's a fabulous journalist, and they wrote this book that we used in Women in Community Change that year, and I was so inspired by it. It focuses on basically injustices around the world toward women and girls, and what people are doing in their communities to change that. So it focuses on grassroots activism, and it's a great book. And they made a documentary about it, and they used celebrities that stand up for women's issues to narrate and kind of talk about and go to these different places. So it's a really powerful film as well, and I think they've come out with a second book. Yes, yeah, Pathways, I believe, is the second book, so have not read that one yet, but. Oh, okay, great. Hi.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, I think you can. You talked about a lot of your accomplishments, and I was going to ask you, what do you hope to accomplish in maybe 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Like, what is the legacy you want to leave behind? You have accomplished a lot in such a short time, but have you thought that far? Like, what do you want to keep on doing, or what do you hope to establish maybe in 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah. So that's the benefit of having me. I'm very new in my career, right? So I'm talking a lot about things that I've done, but I've been here, I'm coming up on my fifth year reunion, so I haven't been gone from Trinity, I guess, that long. But I would love to do a lot of things. I would love to eventually go abroad and do social work abroad again. I really enjoyed that when I was in the Philippines, and that's something I'd like to do. I'd love to start my own international NGO that helps women and girls. That's a 10-year, 15-year plan for me. I'd love to spend a few years doing the work that I'm doing now. It's foster care, so it can be very challenging and you can burn out quickly. I've only been in this role for a few months now. I just transitioned, so I'm loving it right now. But I'd love to kind of transition back into where I'm specifically focusing on women and girls again, and then branch out and work abroad. So, yeah. Yes.
I don't want to usurp the students' time. But Morgan, I want to speak for somebody who isn't here today, and that's Sister Mary Ellen. She spoke to me about you on several occasions and kept telling me what promise you had, and I didn't know you. So one day, and I really do forget the occasion, I met you, and in my mind I thought, this is the Morgan Carrillo. She'd be terribly proud today.
Thank you
And
so
on her
much.
behalf, I want to thank you for the kind things and the true things you said about her and for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Would you tell us one story of your engagement with a mentee?
So I recently left SMILE, their transitional housing program, where I was for about a year working with doing basically sole case carrying responsibilities for 12 LGBTQ youth who were homeless, which is a very big issue in DC. About 43% of all homeless youth in DC identify as LGBT, so that's a very big issue, and so there are not a lot of housing programs to kind of house them and give them that stability that they need. And one of the young women in our housing program had just been through so much, and she was very challenging for me to work with. She didn't want to engage in services. She didn't want to really pursue anything that I was trying to give her. And unfortunately, there are things that you have to do to remain in housing, right? So it became a very challenging thing to try to get her to go forward with the program, but also you know, keep her in the housing program. And so finally, we just had, I had to get very real with her, and I had to talk to her about my own experiences and how finding one bit of something that we could relate on. And after that, everything changed, and she began basically following me around and wanting to talk to me all the time, to where I couldn't get anything else done. But, but having, you know, similar to, I think, what I did to Dr. Pyland at one point. But I think that sharing, opening up, because in social work, sometimes you're taught to have very clear boundaries with, and you should, but I think me having to open up just a little bit to her, to just allow her to see that I was a real person who, you know, had been through similar things and she could relate to, was really helpful, and everything changed. And she was actually the first resident to move out of the program into stable housing. So that was, yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Hi.
Hi.
Joseph Jensen, faculty, religious studies here. But I would be very interested in hearing you tell a little bit more about your own faith.
Sure.
And the struggle of being in a Catholic church that doesn't necessarily agree with a lot of what Now, and it's not the official church, but plenty in the church would disagree with much of what you're doing. And
Sure. So for me, I know what the church teaches and how a lot of things that I do in my work are not necessarily right in the church's view, I guess. But I think that my God and the church that I know would appreciate any service I do for humankind and would appreciate that. So I think it's as simple as that for me. And I'm comfortable, very respectfully arguing with a lot of people. And I did that pretty frequently when I worked at campus ministry and at Catholic. It's a more conservative campus than I was accustomed to. And when I went there, to say that I love Catholic, love my degree, but working in campus ministry there gave me a lot. I worked very closely with Father Jude D'Angelo there, and with M. Jolie Mendoza, a social worker as well, who was their director of community service. And they kind of allowed me to do my own feminist Catholic version of what I was doing there, which didn't always make sense to them, but they kind of just let me roll with it because they appreciated, I think, my passion for service and what I was doing. But I can't imagine that God would have a problem with me serving the way that I do. So. Yes, or Pope Francis.
Hi, Morgan. I'm Sister Mary Johnson, and I teach here. And lately I've been thinking a lot about our congregation, the Sisters of Notre Dame, and how do we better share the resources that we have. So, for instance, individually, there are sisters here, and you've encountered them, and you've been so eloquent about the influence the sisters had on you, especially Sister Mary Ellen, who was the best. But also, on another level, we have all these international systems, and that's what I'm thinking about. How do we share them better with everyone with whom we work and those with whom we teach? So, for instance, we have NGO status at the United Nations, and one of the issues we follow is women and girls, along with migration and extractive industries. Those would be three of our big issues. So do you have any ideas on how we could better share some of the systems we've got in place that really are extraordinary, but we don't go around talking about them? And from your perspective and your experience, what would you say to us to do?
Well, I think for me it was really impactful, I guess, for me when I was here to really be able to sit down and share with the sisters and hear the stories of the work that they have done and that they were doing. And so I think that in some way, I know it's a big system. There are definite intertwining systems that I have no knowledge of, but I think finding a way to share those stories and those narratives would be really important because people love stories, right? And I think that allowing people to see the work that you're doing in those narrative ways would be helpful. I can think more about it too.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Kimberly, and I'm actually a current freshman at Trinity.
Welcome.
So, I've been thinking a lot of my career because I'm the type of person that just likes to think one step ahead, just to be prepared. So my overall goal for the future is to start a nonprofit to advocate for the disabled community that has gone through sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
But considering I'm in my freshman year, what advice would you give me to be able to pursue this goal? Because I already have a teacher that's encouraging me, especially with this paper that I'm writing right now. But what advice could you give me to get to where you are, or even beyond that, to help this community, especially with the type of society that we're living in today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I think it sounds like you're already off to a really great start. You're asking questions, you're being mentored by a teacher who's kind of helping you along the way, and you already know what you want to do, and I think that's really important and a lot farther ahead than I was. So I think that's really important. I think I would take advantage of every opportunity that you see. So intern, find an organization that you're interested in working for that you would one day want to. You said you wanted to start a nonprofit, that you would like to see yourself starting something like that, or developing material for them in some way that you can kind of contribute to that mission. I would try to do that. Even volunteering, if you can't get an internship, just keep volunteering with an organization you want to work for, and put a little proposal together. Start just taking notes on things that you would like to see, that identify a need that you see. If the organization that you're interning for does kind of what you want to do, but not really, kind of write that down and start thinking of how you could do that. I think that would be a good place to start. But don't say no to any opportunity that's put in front of you. And a lot of informational interviewing is good. So.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your words today. I'm an alum, class of 96, and I have a more personal question. What do you do for self-care so that you're able to do this work long term? It's very difficult work and admirable, but it takes a toll. So I wonder, what do you do for that?
Yeah. When I'm in the moment, so I do several things for self-care, and this is something you're frequently asked in social work interviews, actually, because they want to know that you'll be able to take care of yourself and be healthy in the work that you do. So in the moment when things are really stressful, I like to get up from my desk or wherever I am and take, a walk around wherever I am and just breathe. But I like to do yoga. I like to do a lot of stretching. For me, that's good. I've been trying to be better about meditating, trying to practice, a lot of mindfulness and a lot of gratefulness. To me, that's very, very helpful. But I think yoga is my new thing. I also enjoy just kind of talking. As a social worker, we have group supervision with other colleagues, and so using that to kind of voice everything that you need to talk about. Big fan of therapy as well. I think that it's good to talk about, and I think it's good to be open about that in public settings like this too, that everyone should have a therapist and everyone should talk about it. So, yeah, of course. Yes. Hi.
My question to you is about this idea of, I hear it from many people, starting my own 501c3. Well, I volunteer a lot with a grant giving organization on where I live. And sometimes when you're sifting through these applications, a lot of times you think, now wait a minute, and you ask the people, do you really need to have your own 501c3? And you kind of touched on it. Are they doing kind of what I want to do? But from the point of view of the funders, the more collaboration you can see, the better.
Oh, that is good to know. Okay.
But I mean, you must have some thoughts along these lines too.
Sure. Well, for me, I've enjoyed working, I'm very new in my career, but I've enjoyed working and learning at other nonprofits. And I think, as I've worked in them in a very short period of time, have just seen things that I would like to expand on and work later. But for me, I'm so new in my career. I want to soak up everything I can from those nonprofits and learn from them. I would never say that I know everything or I would start a nonprofit now, but I think eventually I've identified need that I see that no one else is doing, and I'd love to do that. But I'm not there yet, and I love contributing to other organizations who have the same mission as I would like, to see happen in the world as well. So.
Morgan, thank you for being here. I'm Phil Reese. I'm staff here at Trinity, and I just have a quick question. There's a lot of future social workers in this room, a lot of future movers and shakers in the nonprofit world, but not all of us are going to be able to be social workers. So could you give us 2 or 3 tips that everyone can implement in their lives to bring about more social change and help further social justice,
Yeah.
whether or not we're becoming social workers or founding nonprofits?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. That's a good question. I think that I would start by saying, be nice to people. Be nice to people. I think that alone is so impactful for a person. You never know what someone, and we all know this, but you never know what someone is going through that day. So be nice to someone. That's number one, and I think makes it so much of a difference. I think also asking people how they're doing and asking how you can help them when something is happening. You don't have to have a career as a helping profession to talk to a friend and realize they're going through something and support them. So I think that is something, just how you can be supportive. And I think that, volunteering and standing up for issues that you're passionate about, going to a march, we have so many of them, finding something that you're passionate about and using your voice, even if, you're doing the work that you're doing that isn't related to that, find something that you're passionate about and use your voice, because another person is part of that movement, and that's important. Yeah.
Wow. Isn't she terrific?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Morgan. So, Morgan, I was sitting here thinking, especially after Dr. Jensen's question, Morgan is exactly a Pope Francis Catholic. She lives what Pope Francis is telling us to do. He came out with a new exhortation this week, and I haven't had time to read the whole thing. I'm sure Sister Mary and Sister Camilla will be leading us through that in the Billiard Center. But the essence of it is what you just said. Be kind to people, be good-hearted, work to empower others, work for the right kind of moral social change that we all crave and desire. And that's exactly what you're doing, Morgan. Thank you so much. We have a little certificate for you and also a little something else. So here we are. Here, little something else. Yes. You are fabulous, and we want the text. We have it on video.
Okay.
Yes, Phil, the video guy, also asked a great question, so we're happy. We are multi-talented here at Trinity. I so love and appreciate your shout out to Sister Mary Ellen, and I agree with Sister Camilla. We all remember Mary Ellen fondly. No pressure, Sister Ann, but Sister Mary Ellen blazed trails. I would just like to see very quickly how many students here were on the Selma trip this year or last year. How many Selma? Okay, there's our whole Selma group. And you had a fabulous time. And you had your presentation the other day, and your video now is on the website, actually. So thank you, Phil and Timothy, for putting your video up. How many are Canine Fellows or have applied for Canine Fellows or hope to be Canine Fellows? Here's one. There's another. Here's another. Yes. So we have some of these wonderful programs. How many others have simply gone with Sister Ann or with faculty on volunteer service? How many of you have done service trips? Yeah, quite a few. So there is a long history and tradition here at Trinity of working in service to the needs of others. And the Sower Seed program, Kelly, thank you for creating this, because it helps us to lift up the examples and show them to other students who can aspire to do this in volunteer service or professionally in careers. I think the question about how do you actually do this, as a career, how do you start your own nonprofit or pursue that, is something that Dr. Ocampo and I maybe should talk about in the curriculum. Are we, it's part of entrepreneurship. And a lot of times when we talk entrepreneurship, people think of starting a for-profit business, but in fact, start a nonprofit, do something good in your community and get a grant. We need to teach you how to do fundraising. It's something I spend a lot of time doing, right, Maricel and Kelly? So these are all topics that we will take forward to thread through the curriculum going forward. I did want to mention, Morgan is a graduate of the National Catholic School of Social Work over at Catholic University. We could not get, we have 2 alums over there right now in the Pope Francis Scholars Program. Bianca Andrews, who some of you may know as a resident advisor also, and Jerez Andrade. And they couldn't be here today because they have their fieldwork obligations today. So that's where they are. But Catholic Charities, I sit on the board of Catholic Charities here in DC. And the great Monsignor Father Ensler and I talked about this, and he invited us to work with the Catholic University School of Social Work as he was creating this program called the Pope Francis Scholars. And we hope in the future, we don't have any openings this year, but he hopes next year to have more openings for Trinity students to apply for the fellowships that will support you and your MSW program over there at Catholic. So this is something the faculty are aware of. We want to talk more about it here at Trinity. We know so many of you are majoring in human relations, psychology, other kinds of major programs that would tee you up to go into the MSW track, either at Catholic U or elsewhere. And of course into our own clinical mental health counseling track here at Trinity in the master's program. So there's many opportunities. One of the answers I would say to those who asked about how you do it, please plan on getting an advanced degree, because getting your master's degree, right, Morgan? It really will help you take that next step with the credential you need. And to get to that next degree, you have to get your first degree. I heard Dean Michi say. Thank you, Dean Michi. So you have to complete your baccalaureate degree with good grades, because to get into the Catholic U social work program is hard, right? Yeah, so you have to have really good grades here, and then you have to set your sights on graduate school, and we will help you with that, and we can talk to you about that. So keep your sights high, ladies, because we need the new generations coming along. And the only other commercial announcement I'm going to say is, when you ask about how to keep creating social change, there's one more thing, the great 4-letter word, vote. Do not forget to vote.